And we are live. Welcome, everybody. Looks like we have some folks just jumping on board right now. We're going to be starting and kicking off the webinar at exactly 11 Eastern Time. As we give everyone the opportunity to log in, maybe grab a quick snack while you're on your break, or even just check up on your emails and your messages before we kick off at 11 o'clock. I'm calling in from Toronto, Ontario, in the Great White North of Canada. Would love to hear where everyone else is calling in today. Feel free to leave a quick comment here in the chat. Okay, we have some fellow Canadians from Calgary. All right, if you're just coming in right now, we're going to kick off the webinar at 11 o'clock on the dot, but we are a global company and we'd love to hear where everyone's calling from today. Feel free to leave a quick comment in the chat. Well, it looks like we have somebody else also from Toronto as well, too. Okay, from Metro Detroit, welcome. Got some folks from Arizona. Okay, all the way from India as well, too. Namaste, Abhishek. All right, welcome Inna from Arizona. Nanette from Detroit, welcome folks, welcome. Got an exciting webinar today, so we're looking forward to kicking things off shortly. Okay, looks like we have some folks here from Pakistan. Incredible. Definitely a very international audience so far. All right, for some of the new folks just joining us right now, would love to hear where you are calling in from. I'm from Toronto, Ontario, in the Great White North known as Canada. Please do share where you're calling in from. Would love to hear and learn a little bit more about your backgrounds here. Okay, we've got folks calling in from Germany. Incredible. All right, welcome, Arnold from Florida. We got Barry from San Francisco. Hey, Barry. Got Lee from Oregon. Amazing. Cathedral City, Brian, welcome. California. Never heard of Cathedral City, but sounds really cool. All right, and we have some more folks coming in from Minneapolis, a lot of folks from United States, got an international crowd. Well, it looks like it's 11 o'clock on the dot here. We're going to officially kick off today's webinar. I want to thank everyone for coming in today. Today's webinar is going to be around how you can turn operational requirements into intelligent systems. So we've got some folks that'll be joining us and speaking on this topic and doing some demonstrations later. So I'll be your host for today. I'm Marcus. I'm the VP of Sales at Codeless ONE. Also joining us is Mao, our head of product. And last but not least, Asif Sharif. He is the CEO and founder of Modern Requirements, Copilot for DevOps, and Codeless ONE. So for some of the folks that you may be customers of Modern Requirements already or happy customers of Copilot for DevOps, Codeless ONE is a sister company. We're all part of one umbrella. And today we're going to be diving into how you can build no-code applications and essentially turn those into intelligent systems. So who is this webinar really for? Well, I know there's probably some business analysts, maybe some IT project managers or operations leaders here on the call today. Well, when we speak with folks that are detailing requirements, they truly understand what those processes look like, right? You're in the business, you're in the trenches, you understand and live and breathe those processes, but maybe there's no engineering capacity to bring one of those solutions to life. So how can you now take that process and turn it into a live system? So that's what we're going to show you later in this session, is how you can take those requirements and turn them into an application. A second reason you may be here is you're a business analyst. You interview other stakeholders all day. You document them into neat BRDs and FRDs. However, you probably go through the experience of, okay, I've documented this into a BRD, but now bringing it to life the way that your teams want to work isn't exactly how it's mapped out in the document. So what we're going to show you is how you can take some of those requirements and the way you've mapped them out and build something that's practical to the way your teams work. And then lastly, another reason you may be here is you are technical, but maybe you don't know how to code, or you're not really versed in software engineering per se. However, you'd like to bring a solution to life. Your organization has practical needs for different technology applications that can benefit your operations. But like I mentioned earlier, engineering bandwidth may be stretched thin. Okay. So us as an organization, we do have the privilege of serving business analysts and folks within the requirements industry for the last 20 years. And we do have a lot of insights into some of the common pain points they go through on a day-to-day basis. And some of those really, if we were to boil them down, to fall into three major buckets. The first one being wasted output. We talk to business analysts who, part of their role is to document requirements and understand what the business needs in order to move forward. However, one of the biggest challenges is they interview stakeholders, but now what's mapped out in that document, that BRD, that FRD, it doesn't translate technically to what exactly the business needs. And there's a variety of reasons that could be happening, but it's definitely an inefficient use of resources. And when we speak with BAs, it's something they go through a lot in their roles. A second major cost to the organization, of maintaining that status quo, is the technical debt and the rework side. So, I know a lot of the folks, if you're a BA or a business system analyst, you have great expertise around documenting those requirements and understanding the business needs. But yet somehow when we talk to organizations, something's happening. It's still falling through the cracks, and they're not translating into something that can be implemented or used. There could be a variety of reasons, as I mentioned earlier, but the cost is major technical debt to the organization, because now they may have to use a system that doesn't accurately reflect what they had mapped out. And then the last one that we do hear very, very often is strategic failure. So whenever an enterprise has to bring on board a new piece of software technology, it's not as simple as one department buying in. There's multiple stakeholders involved. I think there's a recent 2025 study that cited the average amount of people involved in the buying committee today is around 11 to 15 stakeholders. So now if you're a department and you're trying to drive business change, you need technology to make your operations more efficient, it's not as simple as just saying, hey, look, I understand the requirements. How can I bring that to life? You need something that's tangible that you can now bring to other teams so they can see and feel and look and understand and use what it looks like. So what we're going to show you today is essentially a practical demonstration of how you can turn those requirements into applications. However, look, we have a lot of folks here today on the webinar, and you bring a great deal of your day-to-day challenges. We would love to hear from you right now in terms of what that process looks like. We're going to launch a quick poll on what those good requirements and what are some of the biggest challenges you go through. And I'd love to hear from our audience today. Our poll should launch in about 15 seconds. So yeah, we'd love to hear what some of those challenges are, and then we can share them up here. Okay, and that is, what are some of your biggest challenges in turning good requirements into better operations? There's definitely several things that we've heard over the years in speaking and working with business system analysts. You know, it could be that they need devs even for small updates. Rework takes, you know, anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks because, you know, it's an outdated system. You're running on AS400, maybe a legacy tool. It could be a gap between requirements and execution, as I mentioned earlier. Mapping it out in a document versus actually implementing it, two very different stories. Maybe you can't experiment because there's nothing tangible, right? Or iterate pre-launch. Looks like we definitely have a very mixed set of results here. Right now, the gap between requirements and execution, huge. Okay, that's very interesting because that's something we hear a lot when we talk to BAs and business system analysts as well too. All right, we'll leave the poll up for about 10 more seconds in case there's any last votes. But it looks like quite predominantly here, one of the biggest challenges is really there's that gap between what was written in a requirements document, you know, how can this improve the business, and the execution part. And as I mentioned earlier, that's something we hear time and time and again. And it's definitely one of the major reasons that Codeless ONE today exists. So I'm going to close the poll here now. And I think that this would be a great opportunity to hear and have a chat with our CEO and founder, Asif Sharif, on what is inspiration for Codeless ONE and what he was seeing in the market that led to him to build this. Asif, how's it going today?
Hey there. The inspiration for Codeless ONE really comes from, so we have got 3 products in the company. We have got modern requirements. So if you're doing requirements, then you need a good system to manage the requirements, and that's modern requirements for DevOps. And then we added AI capabilities so that you can go through your requirements in a much more intelligent fashion. Of course, using AI is the new norm. And that sort of sped up 10x how you can do things. But still, you were writing requirements and then you were building it somehow. And what we saw was our developers use vibe programming. And what that means is they use tools to code faster and better. And that helps, but we still need developers. So many years ago, we had built a, we built a product called IDEA. And IDEA was really taking a concept and turning it into a working prototype. A few years ago, we resurrected it and rebuilt it with AI first in mind. And that was the start of Codeless ONE. Now, Codeless ONE is a platform that allows you to take your requirements, your ideas, and turn it into working application extremely efficiently. Now, the brilliance of this thing is you don't need to be a coder. In vibe programming, you have to be a coder. You can't just build enterprise scale applications by working with AI. So Codeless ONE was designed with the clear purpose that we want to have AI work with us to produce an enterprise application with all the securities and all the rights permissions, all the reporting and dashboarding and BI and so on and so forth, and be able to work with AI itself as well, right? So it was really taking an approach where we wanted to give a tool to business analysts and product managers and project managers and others so that they could create applications that are scalable, secure, and are enterprise ready applications.
That's very interesting. You mentioned AI earlier, and I think right now we've kind of hit this point where if you're not using AI, then what are you really doing, right? And everybody's very familiar with GPT and coding assistants and all sorts of tools that can improve productivity. However, when people ask about app dev, like, we're curious, like, how does AI influence application development when it comes to building these business systems, these line of business apps?
Right, right. So really, if you look at the spectrum of how AI is being used, so on one hand, you have people building full stack applications using Cursor or GitHub Copilot or a bunch of other tools out there. And this is the Y programming, right? So you get AI to do some code for you, you then glue it together and fine tune it and so on. And this is improving productivity of our developers, right? So we are at least 2, if not 3x already in what we can produce with our existing team of 100 some odd people in our dev team. And then there is the low code. So in low code, you have a framework, but you're still writing code. You still need to know what code looks like, how do you manage code, how do you deploy code, and all of that. And then the third is Codeless ONE, which is the most business-friendly way of creating applications. It does not produce code. It creates a functioning application, right? And as we'll see shortly, you can then use that to fine-tune the application through talking to it.
That's definitely something that is on the rise. Vibe coding. How can people prompt their way into building solutions? For some of the folks who may be developers or work with development teams, I'm sure they're familiar with agile or waterfall methodologies and the whole software development lifecycle. So, if we had to talk and kind of to give everybody a sense of what the pros and cons are in that, like, what would you say some of the traditional challenges with developing operating systems using agile or that traditional full stack approach versus something like Codeless ONE?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the time dimension of software development evolution, so when we did waterfall way back when, and some people still need to, but if you look at how waterfall works, you'll take a year to build out a solution. Maybe you're doing it iteratively, maybe it's every 6 months or something like that. And then if you look at Agile said, okay, let's iterate faster through it. Okay. And so we'll get solutions out every month or every 2 months. But you still have to do UAT and you still have to do all of those things. So it still take a couple of months to get things out. But imagine the cost of a mistake. I take the requirement, I build it out. There's a gap either in the requirements or in the implementation. And you realize after 3 months, you've gone off on the wrong direction. What is the cost of fixing it? And let's say you don't realize it initially. You build the whole solution, you deploy it, you figure out nobody uses it. You have a bigger problem at hand. Now you've spent $1 million a year in R&D, although you did it iteratively. There's a bigger problem there. So risk tolerance, when it takes a lot of time to realize your vision, is a big challenge. So here's what Codeless ONE does. So you take your concept. Actually, consider this. You meet with somebody in the morning, they tell you what they want. And in the way people do things today, whether it's agile or waterfall or whatever it is, it'll be 3 months, 6 months before you get your business case done. You put your team together, you give them work to do, you do the design, requirements, design, test, release, and you iterate on it iteratively. You're 3, 6 months into it before you see a working application. Okay. Now, contrast that with the approach of Codeless ONE, and that is, if I meet you before lunch and you give me a description of what you want, I will put that into Codeless ONE, and I'll run it under two bot mode, which is two bots talking to each other based on your requirements you've given it. And before you come back from lunch, the whole application will be built, deployed for you, so you can start using it. And now you can start fine-tuning it. Just the speed at which you can change this is a game changer. Because you see, speed by itself is not terribly interesting, other than, yeah, you can do it faster. But the implication of that is, how much risk can you take? How many times you can say, nah, that wasn't a great idea. Let's go this way. Let's do this instead. It's not possible to do that today, right? So speed has many implications. It is opportunity cost. It's how you can manage risk. It is the cost of doing work. But I think most importantly, how can we engage the audience? If I give you 50 user stories, and as a business user, you have to read it, how easy is it to consume the data and imagine the end solution, right? Or even if I give you screenshots, you still have to imagine how the whole thing connects together. But what if I could give you a working application? Now you can use the thing. You come back from lunch, I give you a URL, you start to use it, you say, oh my God, this is what I want. Or no, this is not what I want. This is what I really want. Well, we go back to square one. We give Codeless ONE the new direction, and voila, you come up with a better application, right? So it changes the way we can engage with audience and empower our business through building enterprise scale application ready to go.
That's incredible. I think that's a perfect segue into what that looks like in practice. Now, before we dive into the demonstration part of the webinar, I know as a company, we have made some very exciting changes to the product, because we have folks here today that are BAs that are using modern requirements or Copilot for DevOps. One of the most requested capabilities was now the ability to turn some of those work items into an application. Asif, can you talk a little bit more about that before we dive into the demo piece?
Yeah. So one of the requests we had, in fact, it was a highly requested feature for Copilot for DevOps. People were saying that, hey, we have our requirements in Azure DevOps. We want to be able to take those work items and be ingested by Codeless ONE and build an application based on those requirements. So we in version 6 of Copilot, which is going to be out next week, that's in V6. I'll show you how that looks as well. The other request we had was, instead of copying pasting into the project description, whole BRD, can I just upload my BRD, my PRD, or SRS, or a user's a backlog item? So now we have supported the ability to upload documents as well. And what we also did was, previously our AI would take you through a couple of steps. Now we've expanded it, so you can have a much more deeper conversation before it actually decides to analyze what needs to be built and builds it for you. So should we get into and show these folks what it looks like?
Definitely. Let's do that. So while Asif is setting up his screen here for the demonstration, everybody, there's really going to be two parts of the demo. The first one is, if you are a modern requirements or Azure DevOps user, you can now take some of those requirements and turn them into apps. The second part of Asif's demo is going to be around our exclusive release of agent mode, where agents act as a product owner and a business analyst to autonomously create this app for you based on those requirements. But without further ado, I'll pass the floor over to Asif so he can show what this looks like in practice.
All right, folks. So I have logged into Codeless ONE, and what I'll do is I'll start by creating a new application. Now, when I create a brand new application, there are two options I have. I have an option where I tag team with the AI system, or I can do a two-bot approach, where once I give him the spec, it can do the needful. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select this asset management BRD, which looks like this. So basically, here is a BRD that has goals, objectives, scope, the stakeholders, the requirements in it, and so on and so forth. And I'm basically giving it that document. App description, I don't need to give it because I already given the document. And then what we'll do is that we'll basically process. We'll say, hey, you know what? Now two agents, I want you to talk to each other. One is a Codeless ONE agent, which is we call the dev agent, and the other is the BA agent. So they are going to now have a conversation based on the document we gave it or any other information we would have given it, including work items from Azure DevOps. And it's going to come up with what the application should be. Now, this process might take 5-10 minutes for it to flush out and build the application for us. But what we will, while it's doing this, we'll move on and take a look at something else. So what the other thing we'll do is we'll create, we'll take the other approach where I want an asset management system for Codeless ONE, take two. And so now we have two choices. So remember, we've taken the interactive approach. So we are tag teaming with AI to do this. We can give it a name, we can give it a description. And to the extent we want to give it a description, you can type it in there or you can upload a file. Okay. What you can also do is you could go to your backlog view. I'm just showing you a few different ways of initiating this process. So what you could do is you could take a series of work items, go to Copilot for DevOps, and go to Codeless ONE app generation area. These are the work items I had selected, which will now become part of the agent helping us build the application. And now it's asking me, what name do you want? I'm going to use the input, the work items you gave me as input, and then it'll take us through the process. Okay. So connecting Azure DevOps, Copilot for DevOps into the pipeline for creating applications with Codeless ONE, again, was a highly requested feature. So now we are delivering that. But let's do this. You know what? I had asked ChatGPT to give me a short description of asset management. So here it is. Now, I could have just uploaded a document if I wanted, but I'm just going to give it a short description, and we're going to go see how this application is built. So now it has a short overview of the application of asset management. It's coming up with a series of objects, so we obviously need an asset. The asset has a status, has a name or a title, has a serial number. It could be assigned to as the owner, if you like, and so on and so forth. Okay. You could also say, hey, I need a vendor in there. So you could have vendor in there. What's the last maintenance date? So it's going to give you a lot of options. Is it still active? You could even go say, hey, give me more. And then it's going to give you further recommendation. Now, if this recommendation does not include what you need, you can always go and create a brand new property and add it to the list. Okay. So yes, you can use what AI is recommending, but you could also create it yourself. The same thing with objects. So there are various objects here. Say I don't want the asset lifecycle stages, then I get rid of it, right? I can do asset requests. There's a procurement part of it, right? There could be a asset maintenance record that we want to manage. We want to manage asset transfers. We want to manage alerts or renewals or warranties. We can just include all of these in the application. And again, you can ask for more, or you can just create a new object. You can say, hey, I also want to do this. Okay. So I could go here and say, you know what, I do want task management in there. Okay. And I'm telling it that AI will auto recommend the properties is enabled. So now it's getting all the task properties, and then we can include the task in our application as well. But let's say we are happy with this, right? So this is step 2 of 7. We got our objects, we got our properties. Oh, by the way, you can always change the values of things. Okay. You can change the name of properties. You can, if it's a drop-down value, you can manage that here. Of course, once the app is created, you'll be able to do that there as well. Now, then you go next, at which point it'll tell you some of the relationships it wants to manage. So asset has asset types. You got asset warranty belongs to an asset. You can create other relationships that you want to do. So you could say an asset is here, and I need the ability, I want maintenance records, and I want this to be a one-to-many relationship. And this is just saying an asset can have many maintenance records is what it's doing. Okay. So you can see as a business analyst or as a product owner, you will be very comfortable working with these ideas. Now, in the 2-bot mode, it's going to figure everything out for you. Okay. But in this case, we want this to build the application for us. And now there are different types of views that the AI is recommending, what type of views you need for what. And you know what, we'll do the task, this thing here as well. And this looks fine to me. Let's go next. Then it's telling you what are the different portals you might want. So there's the default portal that lets you do everything. There's a task management portal. There's the asset management portal. What I could say, you know what, I don't want a separate task management, but I do want asset management. I want task in the asset management portal, and so on and so forth. Okay, so it's recommended some portals. You can also create other portals. Portals are basically ways where different people could be assigned different portals, so they have different access to the information. And then you can choose whether you want navigation on the top or the left. In ADO, you have it to the left. In places like Salesforce, you have it at the top. You can choose which approach you like. I'm going to go with the top for now. You can upload your own logo for the application. And let me go next. There are 3 roles this guy is recommending. But you know what I'm going to do is I'm also going to create a vendor role. So I want our vendors to have access to some information. We can sort of determine exactly what records and what fields they'll have access to and what they can do with it. So I'll just add vendor for now. Oops. Okay. Well, but you can. I just am using a test environment, so I don't have the right subscription, but you can define your roles. Okay. At which point you go create the app. Now, when you create the app, you have 2 options. You can do a quick AI setup. So AI will quickly go and build this thing out for you rapidly, or you can do advanced AI setup. Advanced will take a couple of minutes. But for the sake of this session, let's just do a quick one. And so what it's doing right now is it's actually creating the application for you. And before I could even complete my sentence, the whole application has been constructed. All the portals are created, all the database has been created, the app has been launched. I didn't have to worry about finding a server, launching it there. It did everything for us. Now this is the dev or the test instance, but then I can push it to a prod instance if I wanted to. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go and tell it to create some sample data. Because if you have sample data, we can sort of make sense of what this looks like. So we'll go and create, we'll create some sample data. And I use there's 2 options, the AI and the quick one. The quick one takes a couple, 3 seconds to do it. The AI takes 30 seconds to do it. But the AI one gives us better looking data, right? So for example, right now I've created tasks and these are my assets it's created, right? And so I have a switch here. This is in use. This is my serial number. It's assigned to me. This is the date of acquisition. That was my cost. Let's drill down into the Cisco switch. And we can see, oh, by the way, this whole application was built in, I don't know, took us what, 5 minutes to do from scratch. But you see, this is my point. If somebody wanted an asset management system, I could turn around and say, is this what you mean? What an interesting conversation we can have. I don't even have to get all the details up front. I can get the business driver, feed it into it, and then let's engage the audience to go back and forth. And now this is the maintenance record. So I can go ahead and I can say, okay, let's create a new maintenance record, and I can enter all the details here. I can have attachments. So if I do have a warranty artifact, I could simply attach it to it. Or if I have the order form or something else, I can simply attach my the attachments to the asset itself. There's a history that's being maintained. So as I do things, you will see that the history is clearly being maintained, who did what and when. There's also a discussion area where I can go ahead and I can call other people. Now I'm the only one in this application, so I can just refer to, but if I invited other people from here, then we could be having a conversation. When does this need to be renewed? And so I've posted that and they can reply to it. So there's a threaded conversation as well in it. Now, the one other thing that you can do is you can go to Copilot. So Copilot in this instance is going to help us with several things. So one thing I can go and we can say, create a list of assets that is assigned. And so Codeless ONE has this idea that you can create these assets, these lists. You can do it manually, or you can talk to Copilot and it can do it for you. The other thing you can do is, if I go to task, for example, I can switch to my designer view, and I could talk to the designer view that I want to add a new column to this. I want to do things. Now, if you want to add a new column or hide something from here, you can either talk to Copilot to do it for you, or you can simply go to, and this is just going to show you the power of its usability. So now I've got this grid, I've enabled inline edit, and these are the columns I have right now. So if I did not want priority there, then I could simply say, I don't want priority there and get rid of it. But what I do want is I do need the completion date added to it. So I make that change, or I want certain buttons enabled or not, or I want my button to be outside. I can easily group things however I need to. Okay. So we can reorganize things and so on. At some point, I can just go click update, and this will update the application instantaneously, and we can continue to use it. So updating the application can be done inline. For example, right now I have a nav bar. My menu is on the top. I could say I want it on the left. And let's say I do not want approval workflow available in my menu. I don't want the user profile showing up. And I don't want asset warranty either, because asset warranty will be under the asset. So I can remove certain things that I don't want in my menu. And you just click update. And it will go ahead and move the menu to the left, hide certain options. Now you can see those other options are gone. And now our navigation is from the left. So the whole idea of this application now becomes, we can rapidly visualize, fine tune, in fact, start to use it. If you want to go to the dashboard, you can even talk to the dashboard area, and you can say, what widgets should we have in the overview dashboard for critical info. Okay. So now you can obviously go to this place and enable the widget and create the dashboard. Okay, you can create the dashboard, have all kinds of widgets in there. But the advantage of this thing is this can give you some ideas, right? Would you like to help to add? Yes, add them all. Okay. So now a Copilot for Codeless ONE will go ahead and add all the items in here. So it'll sort of come back with a bunch of questions, and sometimes I don't want to ask too many questions. I just tell them, you figure it out and do it. Um, and then it'll sort of have a conversation with you and figure that out. Okay. Now, the one other thing that you can do is you could define, because you see, when you want to build an application, there may be many internal workflows, okay? Or you might have approval workflows. So let's say in this event management system, I want to have a place where if somebody has submitted a event request, and this is the details of the event request for me. So I can review this, and then what I can do is I can approve it or reject it or put it on hold. And if I approve it, then it'll telling me we configured that approval should require a comment as well. But you see that the brilliance of this whole thing is that it's too late in the year. So and then everything we approved, rejected got into the history section, so I can see what happened. Okay. But the way you configure all of this is really simple. You basically go to the approval workflow, is what I showed you right now. And in the approval workflow, you can define on what event and what condition should this event get queued for me to process it, and who will get it, and what are the options they'll get, what are the labels, is the comments required or not, is it optional? And you can define multiple steps to the process in defining your approval workflow. But the whole point is, you don't need to be a developer. You don't need to know what the system is doing. It's sort of doing in the background. And by the way, you can also define subflows. So processes can call subflows, which can call subflows. They can be intertwined in that way. Oh yeah, the other thing is you may want to define workflows, right? Because things don't always sort of happen in one shot. So let's say in this case, an event is created. Okay, so that's what I've defined. And then what I'm saying is, if the status is planned or in progress, I have two paths to this. And then I want to call AI to look at the event and then create a invitation. So we are going to use AI to create the invitation. So this will call an LLM to create the invitation for you and update the record. Okay, so update the record, and this thing also has a decision table. So if you know about decision tables can be really helpful, because what it does is that it allows you to not have 500 if conditions in your flowchart. It becomes an extremely efficient way of defining logic, and that's what this does. Okay, so we got a decision table in there that'll make the right decision. This ends. If you go through the other path, it's looping through the records that I got, and then it's going to do the needful and send all the emails from me. Okay, and when it's the last record, then it'll simply terminate, or we could have continued the process. So guys, the whole point is that what if you want to build an application without being a developer, but be able to build a solid enterprise scale application that is amazing, that knows how to integrate to other systems, that knows how to implement workflows, that knows how to provide group access and rights access at the row level, at the column level, at the table level, at the portal level. So there's a lot of information that is available to you, and then in the process have a very rich dashboard. Um, have the ability to create various reports and see how your data, what your data looks like. Okay, so so that's really the idea, that if you're building operational systems, you need an efficient way to engage your stakeholders. Now, some people will create these applications in as a prototype. They'll get the requirements, they'll prototype this, validate the requirements, and then decide, are they going to use the Codeless ONE app, or are they going to go by SAP or whatever they may be looking at, or are they going to build it themselves? But going through this process engages the stakeholders. It brings clarity to what the system should do, because the system is doing it. So, folks, that's a quick snapshot of this thing. And with that, Marcus?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we really covered a lot in that demonstration right there, Asif. I know I saw some people just jump into the webinar as well too. Maybe we can recap together more or less what we covered. I think the first part was the requirements from ADO, right?
Correct. Yeah. So you can take work items from ADO and then feed that into Codeless ONE through Copilot. So there's a connection where ADO becomes the source of the requirements.
That's amazing. Because I did see some comments and some questions in the chat asking about that, so that's great. There was also some questions around, how does this essentially work? I think there are some folks that are understanding this from a perspective of software development. So they're thinking, okay, how do I integrate my code, or how do I put this into my development pipeline? Like, how does this work in conjunction with that, or is this standalone, Asif?
So this is independent of traditional coding-wise development. It has its own life cycle. It's got its own versioning, and it's got its dev, test, prod tenants. It also, you don't have to worry about hosting it. Although we do have options where you can host your own private tenant on Codeless ONE, but it provides its own full life cycle for managing it.
Yeah, no, that's definitely important. I know some folks here from Modern Requirements have on-prem deployments, so that's definitely great for them to know. I saw another question here come in, and we'll use this time to kind of treat it as Q&A for some of these questions. From Nanette, who owns the application once it's created? Would Codeless ONE have any access to it?
No. So you own the application that you build in Codeless ONE. Not only the application you own, but you also own, of course, the data that you create with it. The application and the data is all owned by you. We do not have access to that information that's proprietary to you. And to the extent we use AI, for AI, all learning is disabled. So there is no learning happening based on how you are using Codeless ONE, either from a app dev perspective or from a operational runtime perspective.
Definitely. I know that's something that's top of mind for folks, as you're thinking about how can you deploy applications more efficiently using AI. Well, rest assured that the IP is owned by your company. It looks like we saw another question here from Riaz. I'll put it to the stage. Is this a SaaS only solution? Asif, could you talk a little bit more about that?
So primarily it is a SaaS solution. We do have an option for our enterprise clients for them to have a private instance of it. Most of our clients are on our platform, which is a multi-tenant platform like Salesforce is and every major vendor is, as Azure DevOps is. But we do provide the option for our enterprise clients to have a private tenant.
That's great. That's definitely great to hear. We have another question here from Otas. I'm going to put it up here on the stage. So Otas's question was, can this be integrated with other systems? Example, like a B2B.
Yes. So there are two ways to integrate. There is a no-code way of integration. We integrate with Zapier. Zapier, in turn, integrates with umpteen different platforms. And so there is that no-code approach to integrate with and through Zapier. We do also expose REST API and event hooks. So if you did want to wire the systems together yourself, we do provide that integration as well.
Yeah, that's definitely great to know. We have a lot of clients that, they understand that building a solution within a walled garden has its limitations. So integrating to other systems is key. So we do make sure that we offer those developer-friendly integrations, whether it's through, like you said, APIs or using bridges like Zapier. So that's definitely great to know. I think we have time for maybe one more question here. Okay, so we got a question from Amy Hall. I'm going to put that up on the stage here. If used as a prototype tool, how much can be leveraged by developers?
Certainly the back end, the database has been created for you. So you have all of that. You have all the front end screens have been put together. Those are the main parts, because everything in between is part of the framework. Obviously, we don't create code for everything because that would take too long. It'd be too problematic to do that. So the back end and the front end would be reusable. Everything in between that connects the whole thing and all the business rules that's implemented is not reusable, other than as a document, perhaps. You could use it as a spec. So we've done it, now give me the spec, and the spec becomes available in an unambiguous manner for the developers. But really the intent of the prototype, and I'm sure you realize this, Amy, is to engage the end users and to validate what they want and to evolve the solution at a very quick pace. And that's the primary intent if you use it as a prototype. But I can guarantee you, the moment you show it to them and they start to use it, the next question will be, why do you want me to wait for 6 months and build it for me? Why can't I use it right away? And maybe your answer would be, no, we need to build it for whatever reason, but maybe this is an interim solution. While we're building it, you use this, and then we'll migrate the data, or the database might be the same. And so we'll switch over at some point if need be.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we do get that a lot around, how can we, bring this live? And the great thing about Codeless ONE is they are live applications. They're functional from scratch, so people can start using them right away. It looks like I just want to be mindful of the time here. We did have one final poll As you know, everyone here, you saw the power of our latest release in agent mode. Asif demonstrated some capabilities from our sister company, Modern Requirements, and how they can take some of those requirements and turn them into apps. So, you know, if there are any folks who'd love to see that in action on a one-to-one basis, please, you're welcome to book a demo. Supriya, if you want to put that demo button live up on the screen right now. If there's any questions that we didn't have the opportunity to address, or you just wanted to dive deeper with myself and one of our specialists, please feel free to do so. You can request a demo right now. We have a poll here. We'd love to get your feedback. And that is, what excites you most about Codeless ONE? You know, is it the idea that now application development is one step closer to being democratized? You know, you no longer have to be a traditional software engineer. Now there are obviously benefits, however, but that's one step closer. Or maybe it's the AI speeding up the app creation process. Would love to hear from everyone here at the webinar. Okay, and it looks like turning ideas into apps fast is definitely one of the key ones. And that's something that we hear often. All right, and just a couple more seconds here as we wrap up the poll. Okay, it looks like the overwhelming results are around everyone wants to turn an idea into an app fast. And I think that's really one of the main benefits of no-code development in a platform like Codeless ONE, is that, you know, things aren't just stuck in documents or brainstorming sessions. Now you can actually build it much more autonomously and much quicker using this type of technology. That's great. Well, one final push here for the demo. If anybody wants to see a live demo of Codeless ONE, feel free to click on the request demo button. I want to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. It was really great talking to everybody. Asif, any final words here on your end as we wrap things up?
Yes, just one important point I'd like to make is, of course, AI is hot. Everybody wants to jump on that bandwagon, and for good reason. What I would suggest is, as you get deeper and deeper into using AI in all kinds of areas, and which you should, do it purposefully. Have a purpose to it. Of course, you could experiment with things in a sort of a ad hoc manner, but ultimately be purposeful in it. I found too many cases, just because it's the new hot thing, everybody wants to do it for its own sake. But I think as you look at products like Codeless ONE or Copilot for DevOps, you'll find that it is a very purposeful application. It does some amazing stuff that can up your game. And so I would leave you with that. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance. It's been lovely having you all. Please reach out to us if we can help you in any way. Stay well, stay safe, and goodbye.